It is Tuesday. It is October 17th. Welcome to live stream number 78. Today we're going to talk Fusion 360 and we're going to talk about combining the sculpting environment with the model environment. And I think this one is kind of important. So as people are joining in here to the live stream, if you're watching the recording, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day. I can see we already got Isaac in here. We already got Tommy in here. It's absolutely awesome. Appreciate you guys taking the time out of your busy day. So today's live stream, I'm kind of excited about doing this one. I am kind of piggybacking on last week's live stream where the title was Start Modeling the Way You Want. And I put down in the description area, besides my email address is down there, you will find the link to start modeling the way you want. We model up this box. And really, well, you know, I think we all, when we're trying to learn CAD, we're all trying to find the right way to do it. And I think it's kind of the way most of us engineers, designers, machinists, or whatever we are, kind of like our brains are thinking. We want to find the right way and do it. But I also really believe that sometimes just jumping in there and kind of like start getting something on the screen can help you quite a bit. So that's what I'm trying to attack here. So today we're going to combine the 3D modeling and we're going to combine the sculpting area. We're 1 minute in. We already got 30 people in the live stream. Thank you so much. All right, so let's jump into Fusion and let's start modeling something up. So what I want to model up today is a version of a coffee cup. And the reason for that is that, just to break it down, is I'm really looking at the handle to use the sculpting environment because it's really a lot about dragging handles. And by the way, if you're not familiar with sculpting at all, you will also find down in the description area the intro we did to sculpting. So don't worry, you got it all in this video in the description area. But the shape, the outside shape, you could clearly use sculpting for that also. But my brain kind of like my brain breaks it down more to it's a 3D model. So let's jump in and look at it. Enough of this. Okay, and yes, we're gonna do today's in metric also, just because there was a few people who applauded yesterday when we did that. So let's get going here. So a coffee cup, you know, my brain really kind of like to break things down into just, I would say, rough shapes, and then we can always redefine it. So I'm gonna go up here and start a sketch, and on the plane here, doesn't really matter. I'm selecting the front plane. I'm just gonna start sketching a outline, and I think I'm gonna use Revolve for this. So I'm just gonna sketch something up here, some kind of a thickness coming over. I just try to get somewhat close, and then we can tie everything in with relationships and dimensions afterwards. So at this point here, let's put some dimensions on it. So I kind of like decided that the wall is going to be about 10 millimeters thick, and I want it kind of like unified. So I'm going to go over here to the constrained area and make these two equal here. Now I'm going to start out kind of like, if you're brand new to Fusion, hopefully you can follow along. But I know that probably as we're getting further into this, it might get a little complicated. But just follow along, pick up the bits and pieces you can, and then we'll take care of it in the commentary later. So let's put another dimension in here, and let's make this one about, I don't know, 65 maybe. I always round my numbers up, and let's make this 100 tall. Okay, the thing is fully defined. It's completely black. So let's revolve this one. So I'm going to go up here and use a revolve. So when I select the revolve, I'm going to select the profile. What is that? Reverse L we created. And then the axis is going to be the axis here. And then we should be able to revolve this. What did it just tell me? I missed something. It says the profile crosses the revolved. Oh, hang on. Did I not? That looks like it is. Oh, we're already starting to have problems there. revolve that around. There we go. All right, I don't know what I was picking. So revolve this around here, and we kind of like get a what I would call a cup shape. So a sketch, reversed L, revolved around here, and I gotta just do this. There's multiple ways to get to the same result. You could also have started a sketch and drawn a circle, C for circle, and have made that one 65, 70, 130 in diameter. My mouse is moving, that's why it's not sticking. And then we could have extruded that up. What did I do, 100? I think I did 100. And then you could have used the shell command, found on a modify, shell, and hit 10 millimeters in thickness. These two are identical. I don't care what way you select. I don't think it really matters. Whatever floats your boat. You can say that one is 3 features, where the other one is 2. I don't think it really necessarily have to matter too much. But I'm going to go with the revolve here. Okay, so this is my kind of cup shape. But of course, as I'm looking at this, I can see that, you know, this is not a very pretty cup to work with. So one thing you could do was you could cheat and go out on the internet and find a cup and take a picture of it. Now, I gotta say, this cup here is not looking straight at it. You can see it's like looking a little bit above. So we're gonna have a little bit of display. But with this, if I go to the insert and go to attach canvas, and let's get over to the front view here. And if I select that front face and places this cup, now it comes in way small. Let me just hide the body so we can actually see the cup. And then I will actually turn the sketch back on so we can kind of use that as a reference. Now I can start kind of like dragging this thing out here and kind of place it. I know it's not going to be perfect. But we can maybe, oh, and it's now I can't see my sketch, so you can change the transparency. Can make life a little easier over here on the bar. So I hope that this kind of like helps you a little bit, like see some of these tips and tricks. So maybe around there, maybe make it a little bit bigger, something like that. Now I realize when I do this though, that my proportion might be a little bit off with my cup. It might be not too tall or tall enough. So let me just hit OK to place this image. Let's go back into the sketch by right-click and select Edit and change that to maybe, I don't know, 140, 30, 40, whatever I write. Now, when you see when I went into the sketch here, you see how the picture went away? That's because we went all the way back to the beginning, right? But I could just take the picture because it's not related to the sketch and drag it behind there. Now when I go in and edit the sketch, now you will see the picture stays there. So I can actually see that 110, 140 might not be too bad. So there's a little trick there. You can reorder things in here if they're not associated with one another. All right. So that's pretty good. But then I realized looking at this cup that it kind of, you see how it kind of like flares out up at the top a little bit. That's not, and I also realize it probably has a round at the bottom. Now the round at the bottom I have absolutely no problem with. Let's turn the body back on and I can just hit F for a fillet, right? And I can just place a fillet down here in the bottom and maybe a 10 millimeter fillet, right? That will kind of like take care of the bottom, but it's okay. But I notice how it kind of flares up at the top of the cup, and I kind of wanted to resemble that. So one way you could do this, and again, sculpting, we're going to come to that in a second, sculpting might be a solution here, but I like to stay with my shape right now. So one thing that comes to mind is maybe using something, I want to turn the canvas off for a second, use something like a spline for that. Now I could do the whole side of the spline, but I think I just want to do the flare out here. So I'm going to go in and select a spline and just make sure it snaps into the outer face here. and just drag it out and place it somewhere up here and hit OK. Now we talked about splines before on the live stream. So splines have these handles that makes them really swoopy, and they can really do some great stuff. And there's one in each end, so you can really get a nice shape here. But also be aware of that splines you can use the same constraints as we normally use for standard sketches. We can use for spline too. So I can go over here and select the horizontal and say I want this point here on this to be horizontal to this. Maybe. Try that again. So select this point here and say that I want it to be horizontal with this point, and you see how it moved down. So now that point will always stay horizontal to that. The same thing, we can go in and use dimensions. So I can go in here and say that I'm going to do a dimension from this point to the edge here, and I could say I want that to be 35. So be aware of that you can control not only the spline points here, but you should still use constraints. And actually for this one down here, I will actually let it snap into the vertical line. So it kind of like has a relationship with that. And then I can work a little bit on my kind of like my detail, what I want here of getting that flare out. And I think that's a pretty good flare out there. Now, I'm talking about using dimensions and constraints, and you can definitely do that. We can fully define this spline by literally just going in, but we got to place a bunch of dimensions because each of these handles would need a dimension. Same thing with these two handles up here. They would need some kind of a I wanted a dimension that was running parallel. It will need a dimension like this, but it will probably also need an angle dimension like this in there, and then we probably also need a dimension from the width here. Now you will see it's finally fully defined. You can definitely do that, and a lot of people will tell you that the right way in CAD would be to fully define splines. I normally would say put the dimensions on that you kind of want. I'm just doing Control Z to undo all these dimensions. When you get it to a point where you would like it, I think it's okay to right click on the spline and fix it. Now, I don't think it's okay to fix anything other than really splines when it comes to sketch geometry. It turns green, but tells me that it's fixed. I mean, I can't move it around right now. And so I think that is okay. Now, I want, of course, the same kind of thickness as I had in this area with my new spline. So I'm going to do an O for offset, and I'm going to go minus 10 millimeters because that was my distance here. And I could actually draw, now if I draw a line from this endpoint of this spline over here, over to here, you will see that the sketch kind of like, it gets like this, I don't know, lighter color over here that shows me that it's a fully defined sketch. But I wanted to show you a couple of other tools that I think you should be aware of as we have getting along with 78 live streams. If we go over to the sketch environment, be aware of that there's a trim in here. So I could actually trim off this section right here. So if I click on that, you will see that that gets trimmed away. Now that actually made now my spline here underdefined. So I'm going to go ahead and right click on that one and fix that one too, because it's still a spline, so I'm okay with fixing it. Also in the drop down, be aware of that there's a break. You can break lines. So if I go in here and I hover over this one, look how we get a red cross down here showing us that this line is going to be broken at that intersection. And why would I do that? Well, now where I had this broken and I go up here, I could break this line up here. So let's right click break this line. Now I could go ahead and make these two line segments construction geometry. Now you can't see it right now because the 35 is in the way. Now it's construction geometry here. Now again, you could have done other things. I just kind of like wanted to show you that now I've created kind of like that lip up there. By moving things around, I actually lost, it looks like, my constraint down here. Make that horizontal, and now because I got rid of the tan, I can actually place it again. Make this that should fully define that. Okay, that's another live stream. All right, so if I turn my canvas back on, I feel happy that I kind of like got that swoop on there. Now when I go back into Revolve this, or I get out of the sketch, you will see that the Revolve has kind of like lost it. So let's go in and edit that one again. And all I really have to do is just select that new segment, and I get that here. Now, of course, that looks like this edge might cut your mouth a little bit. So let's go in and add a couple of fillets to that top. And here's actually another thing that surprised me a little bit. I actually thought that the fillet tool would blow up if I went past 0, because this is 2 fillets. And I have some experience with other CAD software that I definitely know would not like when these 2 fillets kind of like crossing over one another, as it looks like they're doing right there. But it will actually do it right at that point. So bravo Fusion for that. I like that. Okay, so that starts looking more like the coffee cup that I think it starts looking more real. Now you can argue that this is not the prettiest coffee cup you've seen, but it's my live stream. Haha. No. So this is a typical environment for me where I kind of like work my way through some of the different areas. And I know in the comments area for last week's live stream on Start Modeling the Way You Want, a couple of people was kind of like, yeah, but what if you need to change things? And I will say that I still have things down here in the tree to change, right? But now I'm starting looking at the handle of the coffee mug. And you know what? I could definitely we talked about sweeps yesterday. That would have been a perfect one to maybe have incorporated. But sculpting really kind of, to me in my head, fits very well here. So we can, of course, mix things up. So to get into the sculpt environment, we can go up here and create one from right in here. Now, when I click on that, we're getting into this T-spline environment. And don't forget, if you have not touched T-splines before, or the sculpting area in Fusion, we have the intro video down in the description area of this one. Now, you get a warning you're getting into the sculpting environment. I'm just going to say okay to that. And you get a different size of tools in here. So now we're not driving with sketches anymore. So get in here and play around, because this is how you're going to get better at using these tools. But I'm going to go ahead and use a cylinder to kind of get me started on my handle. And it looks for a sketch. So I'm going to select the bottom, kind of like the bottom sketch down here. I can select it out of the tree if I want to make sure I get it. And then it wants me to sketch an arc. So I'm going to go top view, and I'm just going to sketch an arc here. Let's make it 30. Like that. And if I roll around, you will see that I kind of gotten a arc in here. And actually, I could have changed how many pieces I want in here, how many subdivisions of faces I want in here. But I'm going to go ahead and use a tool that you already are pretty familiar with. I'm going to highlight the whole thing, right click, and select move. And I'm just going to move it into kind of place where I think the middle section of my handle should be here. And I can also go on top view and really just try to place it, or maybe this view over here, try to place it somewhat in the center here. Now, of course, you could kind of like work with all this, but right now I'm just going to do it with as close as I can with my eyes. All right, now a couple of tricks you need to know about the sculpting environment is how to pick things. So if I select this edge and I just left click once, I'm selecting that edge. But look like what happens if I double click on that edge. Then it selects the whole boundary. And I can actually hold down Control on my keyboard and I can double click and select every circle around here, edge around here. My best explanation of what these rings and lines are is think about like a barrel, a whiskey barrel, just to make it a happy day. You know how it has like the metal rings around it? That is really what these bands do on the sculpt model. Because the sculpt phases will always try to stay continuously. We talked about this also in a live stream about G2 and continuously surfaces, and that's what the sculpting environment is going to do. It's going to try to stay a continuous curve, and these rings are kind of like metal braces that holds it in. So with these selected, if I go up and I right click and I select edit form, I can now completely change all these rings together. So if I select a little scale environment, I can actually make them a little thinner if I think that 30 was not the right value to kind of get my coffee handle to the right diameter. Now another thing, I clicked out in the white space, so I have the edit form active. Another thing you will see you can do in here is if I just select a couple of rings, so double click and double click on the bottom, so by the whole control down, I can start now pulling in these two rings together, and I can start kind of like turning them around, and I can use these handles to really manipulate this coffee handle. So right now I have the two rings selected, and I start pulling kind of like simultaneously in those two rings. I can at any point click out in the white space, that will unselect them, and maybe just double click on one edge and select that set of rings, and now I can kind of start working just on that portion. Now another trick that you need to know, there's a lot of information here, another trick with that whole ring selected, if I hold down Alt, press down Alt on my keyboard, and I start dragging one of these arrows, you will actually see I get a whole new segment. So let me just do that a couple of times. Holding down Alt and dragging, I'm creating new segments. You see that? So that's another neat little trick to know. So this way here, I can really double click, hold down Control, double click to select these two edges, and I can really now kind of start working on kind of this shape of this handle here. And this is really how I would maybe start playing around with it. So let me double click on the edge again, hold down Alt, and I'm just going to drag a new segment off here, let go of Alt. Now you see here how kind of like this now gets almost a lump on it. So let me just move that over a little bit, and maybe I'll just do another one. So hold down Alt and drag, I get a new segment. I can kind of manipulate that till I get close to what I want. Now, so in this space of sculpting, I'm going to stop it right there. In this space, you can really at any point click on these different segments, and you can kind of try to straighten things out a little bit on these rings, and I can try to get a unified segments. I can also just select, a couple of segments. So I could go in here and just select these two edges by holding down Control. And now if I go back to the front edge and I start pulling in those, I'm really only pulling in those two lines. So that is really how we will work with this. Now, I'm going to go up and work on the top here. Double click and pull that one up a little bit. Now let me hold down Alt so I get another segment, maybe another segment. And then let me select a couple of those, hold down Control. I hope this makes sense. And then maybe let me start dragging these a little bit and see if I can get something that what I want here. Turn these over a little bit, stretch in them over like that maybe. I don't know, what do you think? Maybe just go to the last one here and drag that one over, pull, and I think that looks pretty decent. Let's add another segment in here so we get another kind of one we can play with. I probably want to select this edge, hold down Control, double click this edge, and maybe this edge, and try to move them all down a little bit. See how I can kind of like play with them till I'm happy with them. Okay, this is kind of gonna be my my handle that I have just done here with this. Now there's a couple of different ways that you can now get this combined with our coffee cup. I'm gonna show you what I would call, I'm gonna add one, I don't like how this one is not straight. There. I'm gonna show you what I would call like the surface way to do this. So I'm gonna just make another segment, and I'm actually gonna let it go past my solid model a little bit. And I'm gonna do that down here in this section too. Now, hold down Alt and drag a new segment and let it go into my solid model. Now, I will say, there's a couple of different ways you can do this. There is some cool tools in here. Look into something like bridging and subdivide and things like that, but we are coming up on the half an hour, and I want to show you this trick, because if you have watched the live streams, I hope that this would a little bit make sense to you. So I have gotten the handle somewhat what I want. I'm going to stop here. I'm going to hit OK. To get out of this finished form, I'm going to just save, or out of the sculpting, I'm going to say finished form. When I do that, I do get a sculpting that I can go back. I can go back in here, right click and edit that, just like as if it was before. So you can completely come back in and modify. Now, if I look in the bodies folder, you will see an icon that you should be somewhat familiar with if you watch these live streams. It have now become a surface model. So my body is the cup, and now I got this surface model in here. Now, what can we do with this? We want it to be one big solid. Well, one way to do this is to turn off the body. Okay, so now we can see what we got out of this. And we can go into the patchwork space. Now, you've been in here before if you follow the live streams. I'm going to, because this is kind of like just a shell. It's not a closed solid. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and create a patch on this face, meaning I'm just closing off that opening. I'm going to do this, right click, repeat, and do the same thing to the bottom. Now it's still hollow inside, but if we use this stitching, we can actually stitch these three surface bodies into a solid if they're watertight, but we know they are. So I highlight them all, stitch them together, and when I do that, they now became a body, what is awesome. I can turn my other body on, my coffee cup, and now I kind of have this here. Now there's still two different bodies. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back into the model environment. I'm going to go under modify, and here there is a combine function. I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to combine the two pieces together, hit OK, and it now just became one solid. Now the last thing I maybe want to do is add some fillets to this. So we can hit F for fillet. I can add some kind of a fillet in here. We can make it as big as small as we want. I don't know if it will go past this area. Let's see what happens if we go to 3. Yeah, Fusion don't care. So we can add fillets to these edges here for whatever we can. This is a full solid now, right? We made it a solid. So I hope, the last thing I want to do is I'm going to right click change appearance, because nobody drinks a steel cup anymore. That was back in the Viking Age. So let's go here and just paint it. Glossy, and drag a red up on the metal. Now it's red. There you go. So what I hope you got out of this 30 minutes, and you let me know, thumbs up, thumbs down. But what we got out of this was we actually started out with what I would call a pretty rough shape in the beginning, right? And we added that spline to it, and we went all the way into the Sculpting Works-pace. And then we ended up with a solid model that, we can now use for 3D printing. Or we can use it for, whatever we really want out of that. I hope this was useful. As always, do me a favor, thumbs up if you like it, thumbs down if you don't. I really appreciate when you guys give me that. And if you haven't already, it will mean the world to me if you will hit that subscribe button. Then you can hit the little bell and you should get notifications. All right, guys. 95 people in here in 30 minutes. Absolutely appreciate it for you guys who are taking time out of your busy day to join the live stream. For you guys who can't, I know that some of you guys, it's late at night or have to work. I appreciate you guys will watch the recordings here as it gets recorded up on YouTube. That's it. I think that's all that I wanted to. So don't forget, down in the description area, my email address, any future topics you would like to see. There was the link for the Start Modeling the Way You Want, where we did the box, and also an intro to sculpting if this was brand new to you. All right, guys. Until the next time, I'm going to end the broadcast, jump into the live stream, say hi to everybody. Hope you have an awesome, awesome day. Thank you.